We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm sure we'll have more people joining us. My name is Tad Brinkerhoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for Grad and Online Programs, and we're excited to have you here to learn more about our Masters of Education with an emphasis in Student Affairs. It's a new emphasis. The degree's not new, but the emphasis is new. And so we are excited to have some experts here. And before I introduce them, I would like you, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and introduce the guests. I want to do a quick poll, but I want to wait a few more minutes for people to come into the chat. So we're excited to have Dr. Kristy Morgan, Dr. Doug Stump, and Dr. Jared Tippetts here to talk about their careers in student affairs and higher education, as well as tell us about the degree and then how you would use this degree to really advance your career in higher education. So let's start. Dr. Morgan, Kristy, would you mind just giving us an overview about tell us about you and your background in higher ed, and then we'll go to Dr. Stump and then Dr. Tippetts.
Hey, thanks, Tad. My name is Kristy Morgan. I am Assistant Vice President of Career Success here at SUU, and I have about 20 years of experience in student affairs at a couple of other institutions. I was a Vice President for Student Affairs at LaTerna University, which is a small private school in East Texas, and I was Assistant Director of Career Services and a couple other roles at Kansas State University, worked in housing and did my master's and my doctoral degrees there. So I've had kind of a broad range of experience in student affairs. My interest started as a freshman in college when I met I found out later her job was Associate Dean of Students, but I just thought she was this awesome person that was everywhere students were. And I knew I wanted a career that helped people, and I knew I loved college. And like college was the goal for me all the way through school. And I got to college and I thought, how could I stay here? And why is she so awesome? And how could I do her job? So I went to her, and that was the first time I heard the phrase college student personnel, which is another kind of an older school term for student affairs. And she told me about her career, and that set me on a path that I'm still on now.
That's great. Thank you. Dr. Stump.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Doug Stump. I am Director of Graduate Programs in the College of Education here at SUU. And my career is a little different than Jared and Kristy's. I spent 18 years in K-12 teaching and as an administrator, and my master's is in education. My doctorate is in EDD. And I had the good fortune of actually spending 4 years as director of student engagement for a university in Virginia. And that was my introduction to the world of student development, student affairs, and got to work on the team with the VP and other directors. And when I came to SUU, I teach in education courses in the graduate program, but I knew enough about student affairs to recognize that we wanted to have a robust, authentic M.Ed program for those looking to further their careers on college campuses, and so that's when I reached out to who I consider to be the real experts on campus. That would be Jared and Kristy, and that we were able to put this program together. So that's a bit about my background.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah.
I love the breadth, not just, you've got experience all across the spectrum, both as a faculty member and in student affairs, plus in different universities. So you've seen a variety of roles and universities, and that's what we want to talk about as well today. All right, Dr. Tippetts, tell us about you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jared Tippetts. I currently work as the Vice President for Student Affairs at Southern Utah University, and I've been in this role for 11 years on campus, but have been working in higher ed for the last 25 years. I have a little bit of a non-traditional path into this profession, as I think most people do who work in student affairs. It's kind of an accidental place that we all find ourselves, often because of mentors like the one, Kristy described, that led her into this profession. My bachelor's degree is in computer science. And I share that to say that it doesn't matter what people's bachelor's degrees are in. You can pivot and move your way into working in higher education from any background. This was back when the internet was coming online, and that was where all the fun was back then, kind of like AI today, 25 years ago. And so I started down that path, started a couple companies, and learned real quickly that I didn't find a whole lot of satisfaction doing that work. I missed work being on college campuses, and I thought, those people that were my advisors when I was in student government and involved in student leadership positions, they sure have a fun job. I want to do that. And so that's where I pivoted and went and got my master's degree in higher ed administration and student affairs from the University of Missouri, or Mizzou for you sports fans out there, and loved that experience. And then went and got my first job working in student life, student activities, clubs and organizations, Greek life, all these sorts of student activities areas. I worked at the University of Kentucky for 7 years in a couple different roles, and also earned my PhD in higher ed administration while I was there. While at the University of Kentucky, I got really intrigued by the focus that was emerging in higher education around how do we keep students once they get to campus and help them graduate? For a long time, higher ed was mostly a revolving door, and just as students came in, they taught them, and if they left, they left. But we really started focusing 15, 20 years ago on keeping students and helping them be successful and providing support services, which is, of course, where student affairs really positions itself on college campuses. And so I started doing that work. After I left the University of Kentucky, I was at Purdue University for 4 years, doing the same kinds of work before then coming to Southern Utah University, like I said, and have been here now 11 years. And so student affairs is a great place to work. Higher ed is a great place to work. And in fact, earlier this morning, I went in for my 6-month dental cleaning, teeth cleaning, dentist appointment. And of course, there they say, "So what do you do?" And I said, "I work at the university." And, "Oh, well, what?" Everyone always starts with, "Well, what do you do?" And then I say student affairs, and then no one knows what that means. But an easy way to describe it, and I think is in some ways relevant to our conversation today, is I say lots of people go get MBAs, Masters of Business Administration, to work in leadership roles in business environments. Well, I went and got a Master's of Higher Ed Administration to work in leadership roles in the higher ed setting. And so that's what I think helps people understand kind of like what this degree is. It's like an MBA, but if you want to help run universities instead.
That's great. Yeah, universities are big business. They do a lot of good, but they need leadership and they need experience. So, and Jared and I first met in Purdue University, so we've come full circle. So, let's just take a quick minute. I'd love for you to put in the chat where you are physically located, the city and state. And then if you are currently working in higher ed, please put yes or no. We want to get a sense for those of you who are in higher ed and like where you're coming from. So if you just take a minute to throw that in the chat. We've got someone from Hurricane, Logan, Enoch, Cedar, Salt Lake. Everyone so far has worked in higher ed. Yep. Cedar City. So we've got the state covered from Logan down south. Okay. Thank you. Let's pivot just a little bit on some of your comments about building a career. You all three of you have built successful careers in higher education. What is the key to building a successful career in higher ed? What's your experience been? And what are some of the pitfalls you need to be aware of as you look at the landscape today and creating a career at a university? And let's go in reverse. Jared, let's start with you and then go to Doug and then Kristy.
Great. As I offer this kind of guidance and mentorship to colleagues here on campus that want to grow their career in student affairs or higher ed, one of the things that we talk a lot about is finding their niche and exploring different areas to find what they're interested in. Like you said, Tad, higher ed's a big business. Universities are massive organizations, in many ways like small cities. And so we've got everything from facilities and business operations and accounting to, professors and academic side and mental clinics or health clinics and mental health. It's really broad. And people with these types of degree backgrounds work across all these different fields. But for me, as people are like, well, I don't even know where to start. I always say, just start somewhere, discover if you like it or not, and then move on. It's almost more a process of elimination than it is finding just the right one you want. So jumping in is important. And saying yes to lots of opportunities, I think, is a really important part about building people's careers. The people who I've seen across my time in higher ed that have had opportunities to advance have said yes to lots of opportunities, often outside of their job description. And it really helps them become much more broad in their understanding of the organization and the system and how it all works. And so to me, as people are listening today, they may be asking, well, how would this help me in my profession? My hope is that it would expose people to lots of different areas within higher education and hopefully help them start to check things off or areas off that wouldn't be of interest to them. It's almost easier to go that way than to find just the right one. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts.
Great. Dr. Stump.
Yeah, I can share a few thoughts. I think I'm a little bit of the odd guy out here as I currently work on the academic side of the house, which means that I faculty and my administrative work is overseeing the programs, the graduate programs in education. I think to Jared's point, you can kind of start anywhere, and then there's a process of refinement. I like that word, where you're trying to figure out, what is an area of interest for me and what would I like to do. And I think the term student affairs is fairly broad, right? It encompasses different functional areas within a university that oftentimes need to communicate with one another, but the tasks that they're doing are very different. And so I was in student engagement, and I saw my world as as a direct connection to retention, right? So our job was to provide services for students, but also to provide opportunities for connection with other students and with the university and to help them persist through to graduation. That wasn't something that just happened in the classroom. And so my work there was really about creating micro communities, which is the term that we used. How do we create multiple opportunities for students to get to connect with other students in small groups? Because the research demonstrated that if they did that they would be more successful in school and more likely to persist and graduate. But I worked alongside folks that were directors in residence life or worked in conduct or Title IX, and their work was very different than mine, for sure. But they were able to lean into the areas that they were most interested in. And at the end of the day, we're all serving students. We're helping people at this critical time in life when they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their career and what direction they want to do and go, and also who are they as individuals and who do they want to become as people. So for me, that's really rich work. And I would say, in terms of next steps, I think the refining part of that refining process and narrowing your focus is an advanced degree. Folks who start working on a college campus will find out pretty quickly, well, gosh, what does it take for me to move up to advance my career? And the reality is, a master's degree is usually a step that's required to move off that starting block. So just a few thoughts from me.
Great. Thank you. Kristy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with what Jared and Doug have shared. And I do think that master's degree opens up a world of opportunity for people. And I think even though sometimes student affairs can feel like a process of elimination or refinement, there's no wasted experience, especially as you advance. I mean, I think Jared and I could both attest to being over areas that we never worked in. Right. So we supervised folks that were doing jobs that we never did. So having to learn an area or find or research technology that's used in a particular field that I never used before. I've never used housing software, but I need to know enough to help my housing people select the right software. I need to know how the university works. So I did things along the way in my career that I thought I'd like to go to bed by midnight every night. I don't want to do that anymore. But having done them gives me compassion for my team, gives me an understanding of their roles, gives me talking points to a president or to, the board about the value of what we do in all those different settings. So there's no wasted experience. And you may find yourself back doing something you never thought you would do because there's an opening. Somebody leaves or somebody has a baby and you're filling a spot. And that is one thing that I would say is I think really important in people that I'm looking for to work with, and people who I see advance and do really well in their careers, people who are constant learners. I will solve this problem and I will figure out how to do it. I can adapt quickly. I mean, I think having been in a senior position through the COVID pandemic, adapting quickly and having to keep a campus safe and think about all the many problems that I never thought about before. I'd never ordered personal protective equipment before in my role, and then that becomes kind of my prime job. Um, so being flexible and adaptable, but also being smart about that, not just being willing to do whatever, but being strategic about how you do that and the value that you bring to your team in doing that. Um, I would adaptability and the willingness to learn. And I think a master's degree in this discipline, what always stands out to me, because I've always had undergrads come to me and say, well, I'm student body president, or I'm so involved. I've always been involved. I've worked in admissions. I've done this stuff. Why can't I just go right in to a career in student affairs? And it's kind of that you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but I wanted to learn it. And so there is a real value in going in and not knowing what you don't know, but being willing to learn and be in a cohort of other folks who are learning. That's a real strength to be in class with people who are also looking to do this work, creating a network from the start of your career, which this type of program will allow you to do. So, some
Yeah,
thoughts.
that's a great point. You not only have to have the experience, you have to have the knowledge
Yeah,
to be successful.
yeah.
And that's going to pivot us into the next conversation, which is networking. Now, I remember in grad school hearing the word networking, and I didn't, it kind of felt icky at first. But as I progressed in my career, I've come to see the value of building the kind of network. And I like to see it as a network, as a group of people that you can help be successful. And I'll tell a quick story. When I was working at Purdue, I ran into Jared, and he knew I had gone to Southern Utah University, and he said, "Who do you know at Southern Utah University?" Because he was looking at a job there. And I said, "Well, I know Mindy Benson." And he said, "Well, can you connect me with her?" And I said, "Of course." And then obviously he was very qualified. He ended up coming as the VP. And so want to talk about what you've seen be successful in building the kind of network, because it's something we really don't teach, but we probably should. But it's also very, very important. And there's a lot of research out there that tells us that careers are built based on the network. A lot of career success happens because the connections you've made or the relationships you've developed. And I think especially in higher ed, it's a big world, but it's also a really small world. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on effective ways to build a kind of network that allow you to really build the kind of career that you would like to have. And Kristy, we'll start with you and go back
Yeah.
in the other way.
Yeah, I think it maybe I think it is something we can teach and kind of do teach in the professional associations that exist within student affairs. There are lots of them, depending on your field. There are student activities organizations, general ones, career services ones, but they really do provide a good um, kind of entry into the field and provide connections. There's lots of listservs, there's lots of groups to join, there's, lunch discussions. There are ways that people can very much learn how to do this. And I would say the networking matters not just for my next job that I want a good reference or I want somebody to connect me to my next place, but sometimes for a specific problem that you have on your campus. And that is where I think my network has been most helpful to me. I was in the same place for 12 years. I had kids I did not want to move, and I was plugged in a particular place. But as I wasn't looking for jobs, I wasn't needing somebody to give me a referral somewhere. But I did want, when, like, say, for example, when COVID came along, what is your policy? What are you guys doing? And having friends out in the field, and Jared and I were actually talking about this yesterday. I think student affairs is a very generous bunch. So it's a place where I go to a conference. I usually come back feeling filled up because I was just with a bunch of people who get me. I can go to make meetings on campus and feel like faculty don't get me, or maybe my team doesn't get me because my particular role is different than theirs. But I can get in a room with other people who are doing this work and I feel like they get me. And if I ask a question about, we're having this particular problem with our policy about such and such, and they're like, oh, us too. Here's what we did. And I don't have to start from way back here 10 years ago and lead somebody into the problem. They get it. And I think that's been as important to me as the career connections, and definitely having a network is helpful too for building my own team. If I had a reputation that other people, would be happy to send their people to work at my last institution. And it was really great having other leaders that I knew who said, we have somebody coming out of our grad program who's awesome, and I told him to call you. That's awesome because I want to build the best team possible. So it comes not because sometimes people think, I just want to stay at the same place. I don't need this big network. I'd say even if you are going to stay in the same place, the network really matters.
Kristy, do you have any specific tactics? You go to conferences.
Conferences, listservs, finding a group that's as specific to what you do as possible. And even I've done things where I just have, when I started in my role at Laterno, there were 14 female chief student affairs officers within an association that we were in. We started doing an annual dinner and a Facebook group. And we would just regularly chat, check in on each other's kids, check in on your institution. Oh, I saw your president resigned. How's it going? And we just kind of cared about each other's schools. And but then also, we're having this Title IX issue and I'm in over my head. What lawyer do you recommend? We had those kinds of things for each other. That we provided support. So, just meeting people and making them your friend. And student affairs is a very easy field to befriend folks in. And we're also usually the most fun conference. So just a plug, student affairs people have way more fun than academic affairs. And I have no qualms about that. Yeah.
All right. Fun's always important.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear from the academic. Doug, beat that, will you?
Yeah. So let me
That's
start by
fun. He's
let
fun,
me
just
start
not
by
as fun.
confirming that yes, Kristy is correct. Student affairs conferences are way more fun than academic conferences. Just to piggyback on what Kristy has shared, I think of networking in concentric circles. And so if you're in a master's program, your cohort is your first ring of contact. And my first bit of advice, I guess, is get to know the people that you're in classes with and get to know their stories and stay in touch once you finish your master's program. That's really critical. I think if you're on a campus already, there are functional areas on campus that can be part of your network, and it's just good to get to know those folks. Um, I think a couple of examples, I thought I'd share an example instead of giving some more information because I think Kristy really covered a lot of the bases. When I was in student affairs, I was heavily involved in NASPA, which is one of the big national associations. And I met a guy named Joel, and we kind of hit it off. And then I went to it's like a 3-day conference on preparing to be a vice president of student affairs, where I did some deeper work with Joel. And we have stayed in contact with each other. And I would say we're genuinely friends. You know, if I'm in his neck of the woods, we meet and grab dinner. If he has some weird thing, because he knows I have a K-12 background and he does some consulting, he'll pick up the phone and call and say, I'm going to talk to this Catholic school and I'm going to work with them about this issue. What resources do you have for me? And, you know, I've always got stuff for him. Um, the other example I was going to give you is sort of student affairs related. So when I was at Shenandoah University in Virginia, which is where I was director for student development or student engagement, we had a problem on campus. And this is a pattern that a lot of folks experience at a university. So we had a revenue issue with our summer programs. And because part of my world overlapped the use of the student center and the use of building space, and my friends over in Residence Life also were involved in this, they said, Doug, would you mind taking the lead and doing some fact finding for us? Well, because I had developed a good network of professionals across different campuses, I put together a 7-campus tour and went to visit their campuses and talked to the people that managed the conferencing and convention space for the university, and came back with this basically case study that I could present and say, here's best practice. Here's how these schools have been successful. I also met with some schools that were struggling in the same ways that we are. Here's the results of what I found out from talking with them. And so, you know, to Kristy's point, networking is critical in this work, because you're never going to problem solve in a vacuum. And a lot of problems that universities face are in some ways unique to the campus, but also not unique to the profession. There's always a campus out there that's maybe seen the problem before and has done a really good job responding, or is, like you, experiencing it for the first time and are looking for ways to navigate through successfully. So, yeah, just a example there of how a network has been helpful to me.
Those are great examples. Thanks, Doug. We did have a question about student affairs organizations that you participated in, and Jared's responded in the chat. Jared, do you want to just give us an overview of NASPA and ACPA?
Yeah, the two largest professional organizations for student affairs work is NASPA, the National, which stands for, well, they changed it. NASPA used to stand for National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. It's Student Affairs Administrators in Higher Education, but it's the largest organization that provides professional development, conferences, and research for the profession. If you go to the national conference, there will be 7,000 to 10,000 people there. It's a massive organization. There's another one called ACPA, which used to stand for American College Personnel Association, or Association of College Personnel Administrators. I can't even remember. Kristy, you may remember, but College Student Educators International is what they now go by. And it is similar to NASPA, which is just another large organization. Those are the two biggest ones out there. And in fact, what is it, every 5 or 10 years, Kristy, they do a joint conference?
Yeah.
And then there's 15 to 20,000 people there.
It's massive. Yeah.
It's massive. I think a conference like that is always really interesting because there's 50 different concurrent sessions going on at any given hour. So you can always find things that you're interested in. And in fact, the challenge is narrowing it down to determine which sessions you want to go to. I end up spending most of my professional development time at smaller conferences that are more focused on niche, kind of my expertise and my niche, which is more on student retention and completion and graduation efforts and those sorts of things. And many of these large organizations like NASPA and ACPA will have statewide or regional conferences, and that's often a great place to start to get connected, to meet people, and to start to volunteer and take on leadership roles and do all those things that really expand your network, of course, with the support of your supervisor and your campus, because it does take time away from the work you're doing on your campus, but it helps you personally and it helps, I think, the campus. And I'll just quickly expand on that a little bit. Throughout my career, I've tried to be pretty involved in the profession. I've also worked hard to build my network. One thing I was just going to mention, back to your previous question, Tad, is that I have just taken advantage of the goodness of the people in the profession. And I just reach out to people all the time and ask for a 15-minute informational interview. And, you know, if in fact, I'd invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not connected. And if you want to chat or follow up or whatnot, or have one of those informational interviews with me, I'd love to do that. I try to give that back in the profession a lot. But as a result, I've gotten to know a lot of really interesting people, big players in the profession, and they've been so gracious to welcome me into their network and their circles. And that's what I would encourage everyone to do. I still do it, even as a vice president. I try to find individuals across the United States or even around the world and reach out to them and ask for a 15-minute informational interview. And I just talk to them about the work they do. How did you get to where you are? What are the biggest issues you're dealing with? So on and so forth. And so to kind of wrap up these comments, back to what I was talking about with getting involved in these organizations is, yes, it benefits you, but it also benefits the campus. Because through my connections, you know, I have been able to get SUU featured in the Chronicle of Higher Ed multiple times. I've been able to serve as webinar folks, you know, or sit on webinar panels like this for the Chronicle of Higher Ed 6 or 7 times. So SUU benefits from our networks that we bring to the table as well. So anyway.
Yeah, 100%. That 15-minute informational interview will get you further than applying for 100 jobs, in my opinion.
Tad, I'll just add, I have never applied for a job. I mean, you've submitted an application. I've been invited to apply for every job I've had as a result of my network.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
And Jared, one thing I think you do really well is you utilize LinkedIn. I've loved reading your posts over the years, and still read them. And I think that's a quick and easy way to get connected with ASPA and ACPA. Join their LinkedIn group, see who's there, send a couple of invites to connect, ask for that 15-minute interview. Most people, especially in this field, will be glad to meet with you. Keep it short and focus the conversation on them. But I think that's something you can do today. Take 10 minutes and join those groups. So yeah, Jared's already putting in the LinkedIn. So thank you for that. All right, let's pivot just a little bit because we want to learn more about the SUU program and what makes SUU different. Some of you work at SUU, know SUU, so we probably don't spend a ton of time on what makes SUU different. But Doug, let's, from an academic perspective and someone who's helped design the curriculum, kind of walk us through what the Masters of Education's like with the emphasis in student affairs and what makes SUU's program different than others in the state or maybe nationwide.
Yeah, so I'll start with some context. This degree and emphasis has been on the books for a few years, and you know, when you get K-12 folks to design something, you know, the concept was really how can we efficiently offer multiple emphases, and so the courses ended up being more K-12 focused, and you know, K-12 education is very different than student affairs work, right? And so what we wanted to do is restructure the program, introduce new courses that are going to address the needs of young and emerging student affairs professionals. And so one of the aspects of our program that actually is unrelated to the coursework is that it's fully online. Our program is asynchronous, and so we don't have courses that you would attend either in person or in an online format. Our program courses, these have been redesigned to really address some very specific areas that any professional would need to know, regardless of the functional area that you're interested in. So it's designed to give folks the theoretical knowledge, but also the opportunities to apply these concepts within coursework. So whether you're thinking of residence life or student conduct or student engagement, clubs and organizations, Greek life, all these different areas of student affairs, the coursework is designed to give you both background and material that you can use and apply right away, regardless of which functional area that you're in. And so some of the highlights of some of the redesign that we've done, we've put in a history of higher education in the United States, which is we also have fundamentals of program evaluation and assessment, which is critical. We have a course on student conduct resolution, and we have a course on student success. And then we also have, we're introducing a few courses that are designed to as an opportunity to bring all this information together. One I'm really excited about is case studies in contemporary student development. As somebody that teaches at the graduate level in school leadership, I know the value of case studies as an opportunity to apply theory and practice to real world situations. And then we also have added a practicum course and then a capstone course. So that's kind of an overview of what's new about this emphasis. But I think part of what sets us apart is that we have narrowed it, right? We're not trying to be higher ed leadership kind of in general. It's really focused on student affairs, which I think is important. That's a distinction. And I do think the online delivery and the way in which we structure our courses takes into account the folks that are taking our program are working professionals.
Yeah, great. Tell us about some of the faculty that will be teaching. I think all three of you are teaching, and you have practical experience as well as theoretical knowledge. Tell us about our faculty.
Yeah, I think this is one of the unique aspects. And so as somebody that is a full-time faculty member, you won't often hear me say, maybe the best thing for a program is not to have full-time faculty members. But in this case, we have folks that are executive leaders in student affairs teaching these classes. And so you have practitioners who are still practitioners delivering course content. And so two of the folks that will be instructors in our courses are here with us, Kristy and Jared. And we have one person that's not here, but but he works in school leadership. He's in the provost office, and he's designed a couple of those courses for us. His name is Jake, and he'll be teaching a couple of those courses for us as well. So we have folks that are practitioners, that are executive leaders, that have a depth of experience in the field, both designing and delivering the classes.
Yeah. And I've heard it said that we're the only online program in the state, fully online program. Is that true?
Yeah, I think there are other online programs. I think one of the things that makes us a little different is we don't have required course attendance at specific times. So in other words, we're not offering an online class 6 to 9 on Tuesday nights, right? The asynchronous feature is a unique feature for us.
Yeah. So I think modality, we're also SUU was recently ranked number 3 in the nation for most affordable programming. So not only do you have the modality, you have the cost benefit advantage of SUU. So Kristy, can you briefly talk about, you've been at other universities, how would you describe the personality of SUU? What's our culture like here as you look at participating in this, if someone was looking at participating in this program? What are some of the external benefits, not just to the education, but the culture and then beyond that?
Yeah, well, I would say there's a deep culture of caring for students. And I have a freshman student at SUU, and I was just telling Doug last night, actually, she struggled a little bit in her freshman year. And I thought there is no nicer place to struggle than SUU. Like, it's just an overwhelmingly kind, supportive people. People will do the most, to help you out. And so I think thinking about a program like this, where people will probably be balancing a number of responsibilities. Grad school just is that way. Student affairs is that way. I think SUU has a culture of caring about its students, caring about its faculty, caring about everyone involved, and that really I think would set this apart from some of the other programs that online programs can feel a little bit like machines that you're just kind of moving through. And I do not think this program will have that feel to it.
That's great. Good. Well, thanks for that. And if you are interested in possibly applying for the program for this fall, Taylor, who is on our call today, will be glad to reach out to you. So Taylor, if you'll put your information in the chat, people can reach out to you. We do have a question. Someone who's currently in the MPA program with an emphasis in higher education. I had 2 semesters left. Would it be worth jumping from that program to this, or would I be starting over with my graduate program? I think, Sam, I think for that, we probably, without getting into specifics about your particular case, I would recommend you talk to Doug, Dr. Stump, reach out to him. Doug, if you could put your contact in the information there, that would probably be worth an in-depth program or an in-depth discussion about your particular case. So thank you for asking the question. Yeah, so there's Dr. Stump's email right there. We've only got a few minutes left, and I really would like to just focus on the future of higher education. If you're, 25 or 30 and you're starting, you've got 30, maybe 40 years of work left. And as I think about people starting their careers, you also want to assess what does the future look like in our industry. We've got AI. I know in my previous job, we used AI coaching. And is AI going to impact how we operate with students, how we connect with students? Or there's financial concerns, or there's a consolidation amongst higher education in some regard. Just curious, Jared, if you could maybe comment on someone who's starting a career, wants to get a master's. What does the future of higher education look like, and what are some of the exciting things, and what are some things to be cautious about, I should say.
Yeah, there are absolutely days where I wish I were 10 years older and were going to retire tomorrow because higher ed is changing so rapidly. And there are absolutely days where I wish I was starting all over and knowing what I know now, because I think higher education as an industry is so exciting and will be full of so much change and movement and adjustment in the next, next 30, 40 years of someone's career. And so I'm still obviously very bullish about higher ed. It's not going away. It's been an industry that has survived for hundreds and hundreds of years. Will it look the same 30 years from now as it does today? The answer is no. It will look a little different. Because we have real challenges in higher education today. We have some headwinds that are new to us when you look at the industry or the profession. We have lower numbers of 18-year-olds that would be traditional college-age students coming into higher education. And so, there's more competition to meet enrollment goals and those sorts of things among colleges. So you'll hear lots of headlines in the news about universities who are either merging or even closing and things like that. In the next 5 years, I think you'll see that, We also have some adjusting views on the value of higher education. And so higher education, we've got to get better at telling our story and the value of a degree, because you can look at every piece of research out there about the value of higher education, and it all zeroes back in on how those individuals who earn bachelor's and master's degrees are healthier, happier, wealthier across the board, And so right now there's a real kind of narrative out there that you don't need to go to college to be successful. And while that's absolutely true for some people, the data doesn't play that out when you look at the macro level in aggregate of society. So there's, I just think if I were starting today as a young professional coming into the field, what would I do differently? I'll tell you one thing I would do is I would get much more interested in and involved in the delivery models of education, like what we're discussing today, online degree offerings. I think we'll see a lot of movement and adjustment there. I would get much more involved in thinking about how does my work benefit the bottom line of an institution? How do I make sure that areas I'm involved with impact retention and completion and enrollments and those sorts of things, because that will become a really important part of the work that happens across higher ed. Um, there's reasons to look at higher ed and say, I hope that industry gets a little more or wakes up a little bit and adjusts slightly, but there's many more reasons to say higher education is still a really special place to work and a great profession to be connected to.
Great. Thank you, Jared. Kristy, what does the future look like for you? And then we'll have Doug wrap us up at the end.
I was glad you asked Jared first because he's like the futurist. He likes all of these things futury. I think there's if you pay attention to the media, like he was saying, there's just a lot of doom and gloom around all of these things. I do not see doom and gloom. I just think, and I see just still a lot of opportunity for human connection within student affairs and really solid, thoughtful decision making. The program I came out of at Kansas State, our motto was making caring, ethical decision makers for lifelong learning, and caring, ethics, and decision making. Those are just critical to the work that we do, and none of those are things that AI does well, but they are things that are really critical in higher ed and in student affairs. And I still think, some of the language that Doug used earlier about this transformational time in students' lives and becoming whole people, that still just like makes my heart sing. That is the stuff that makes my heart sing. And there is not another field that does that. And so I think there's still, probably more than ever, there's a need for that because I think we're dealing with some developmental delays, some, extended adolescence. There is still just this need, and student affairs really needs to be here to fight the good fight and keep institutions focused on some of the things that have been foundational since the beginning of education, and we don't want to lose as we move forward.
Yeah, I love that optimistic approach. All right, Dr. Stump, bring us home, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I just a few thoughts. When you think about college and how it interacts with our lives, I'm looking back a few decades, and so much has changed. My grandparents were the generation where you dedicated yourself to one employer, and that employer took care of you, and you did your work, and you retired from that one employer, and you had a pension. And that world has been blown up. And now we have several iterations of our professional selves over our lives, which I think is really, really wonderful. And I think, it used to be if you got a college degree, you went at 18, you graduated at 22. Academics got master's degrees, but there weren't a lot of professions that were asking for them. And I think where we are now, I got my master's in education. I worked 7 years in insurance. I got my master's right before 30. I defended my dissertation at 50, and so I think one of the things I would encourage folks to understand is that I think the master's degree is a critical step. It's not the last step. You'll finish that degree, you'll advance in your career, you'll go into a new position, and then you're going to have new things to learn. And that there might be an opportunity for you to go back for a doctorate, and it's never too late. And I don't know anybody who ever regretted getting a graduate degree too early, right? It's always been, gosh, I wish I'd have done that earlier, or I'm so glad I did it when I did it. I had a toddler and an infant at home when I did my master's. I had two in college and one in middle school, one in high school when I did my doctorate. And so I do think there's that concept of continual advancement in your career. And I do think that there's opportunities for us to continually refine who we are as professionals through experiences like what we're talking about here today. Um, and I think what's there's an aspect to our professional selves that's part of that. I think human nature is that we want to get really good at something and become an expert and then spend the rest of our time just being the expert in that thing. I think about woodworking and what it's like to be a master craftsperson. And once you learn to make finials by hand and stick them on bedposts, you just want to continue to do that. But I think higher ed, certainly K-12 education as well, these are fields where as soon as we master something, we're then asked to do it differently or incorporate a new concept into that. And I find that to be invigorating and exciting. So I do think that's just part of our field. The other thing I would mention is um, it's harder and harder to define our professional selves by geographic location, right? The internet's connected us all. And I would say don't be afraid to look at other places, when you're thinking about where's that next opportunity going to come from, right? Because if you've listened to us today, we've all been at multiple institutions, and I'm thankful that we're all here together at SUU. But so much can be gained from experiencing how other campuses do things. And that can be through a master's degree, or it could be through this internship or an opportunity that comes your way. And you never thought that you might, you might spend your whole life in this one location and then you have an opportunity to go somewhere else. I think these are good opportunities as well. It's an opportunity to have a more dynamic network and have a more dynamic set of experiences that you can then take into that next role. So there's just a few thoughts from me.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, there's a reason our motto at SUU is learning lives forever, right?
Yeah.
So the learning never stops. Well, we're going to wrap it up. A big thank you to Dr. Morgan, Dr. Stump, and Dr. Tippetts for being with us today and sharing their thoughts. We will send out a recording of this to everyone who signed up. We appreciate all of you for being here with us. And once again, if you have a question about the master's degree and with the emphasis in student affairs, please reach out to Taylor. Her number and phone number and email are in the chat. So thanks everybody. We hope to see you at SUU in the master's program sometime. Bye bye.